Before you swipe, subscribe, upgrade, finance, enroll, book, or say yes, ask one question. Is this buying me more freedom or buying me another obligation? Because not all spending is bad. Some spending buys time, health, income, capacity, mobility, ownership, peace, and future choices. But some spending quietly raises your baseline, drains your buffer, creates maintenance, and locks you into needing the perfect income just to be able to keep up. Today, I'm going to be talking about spending that buys options versus spending that buys obligations, how to tell the difference before the money even leaves your account. I'm going to break down freedom spending, maintenance spending, and trap spending, and you'll walk away with understanding what are the options versus obligations spending filter so you can spend for more freedom and not fragility. Let's build a decision matrix before the transaction clears.
Yeah. So they might go right
Welcome back, my optionality builders and wealth acquirers in training. We are here talking about real wealth on purpose. Welcome back to another episode of the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, founder and CEO of Connect Up and managing director of the Integrated Capital Fund. On the show, we talk about wealth wisdom and money moves, simple, strategic, and for grown folks only. I'm so excited to have you here today. Think of me as your personal wealth co pilot. Here's a quick plug before we get started. If you're in the Twin Cities, come see me live at Pride this weekend at the AM 950 booth at 11 o'clock. But now, back to today's conversation. Today's episode is called Spending That Buys Options versus Obligations. And I want to start here. Some spending makes your life bigger, and that's amazing. But some spending makes your life tighter, and that's not what we want. And the problem is not necessarily the spending. The problem is not that you bought the thing. I just want to get that out of your mind. The problem is not that you wanted ease or that you wanted beauty or you wanted help or rest or convenience, or maybe you wanted coaching or you wanted to travel. You wanted a better home, a safer car, a business tool, a house cleaner, a childcare solution, a course, a wardrobe, a vacation, or just simply a better version of your life. The problem is not your desire. The problem is not your enjoyment. The problem is not wanting your money to make you feel like it was all worth something, all that hard work you've been doing. The problem isn't even not knowing whether your money is buying you options or whether it's buying you obligation, because those are not the same. An option expands your choices. That's really what's the most important thing here. An obligation begins to narrow them. An option creates capacity and an obligation creates just another I must pay this. I got to have this paid every single month or every single year. An option helps you move. An obligation makes you need more income just to stay still. So today we're going to be having this conversation without any shame. No shame, just strategy. I'm going to be talking about how to evaluate spending through the lens of optionality instead of the lens of shame or judgment. Because remember, in this quarter, I'm going to be talking about the O in my soul framework. And just as a quick reminder of what the soul framework is, the S stands for stability. This is where you're building practicality, you're building your buffers, you're reducing your volatility in your income as well as your spending, knowing what your baseline is, building your buffer, and on the path to building your brick house. The O is optionality. That's the season we're in right now. This is what we're talking about building liquidity, building flexibility, having the ability to choose without being centered in panic. The L is for leverage. This is where we start to build assets. We are going to build ownership. We're going to build influence. This is the ability to use what you have to create more power, more value, and more impact. And the E is embodiment. This is when when you got all of those things aligned, you're now able to live in your values and make real decisions, not just talking about alignment, but practicing it when money leaves your accounts. Today sits right in the middle of the O and the embodiment, the optionality and the embodiment, because spending is where your values meet your calendar, meet your nervous system, meet your relationships, meet your bank account, and meet your future. And the question is, does this spending increase my future choices, or does it actually reduce them? This is what I'm talking about today. Now, let's first start off with defining the two categories, just so we can get that off the bat. First, I'm going to talk about spending that buys options. And so I want you to lock in. Spending that buys option is spending that gives you more future choice. It gives you a skill. It might increase your income capacity. It might save meaningful time, whether it's in your business or in some other capacity. It actually might reduce some risk. It might improve your health, your energy, or just your general executive functioning. It might increase your mobility. It might strengthen a relationship or a support system that you're desperately in need of, or may not even know that you're in need of. It might create ownership or infrastructure or future leverage. This kind of spending can look like a variety of different ways, and here are some examples of what it looks like. It could be a certification that helps you move into a higher paying bracket. It could be childcare that gives you enough uninterrupted work time to grow revenue in your business. It could be a reliable car that protects your ability to get to work and reduces the repair chaos like that expensive flat tire. It could be a therapist, a coach, a trainer, or a health intervention that improves your capacity to actually function on a day to day basis. Maybe it's a business tool that saves 5 hours a week and helps you deliver better or serve more customers. Perhaps it's a legal document that protects a business partnership or your future estate. It might be a course that you have the time to plan and implement. It could be a house repair that prevents a bigger future problem. Or maybe it's a trip that restores you, strengthens a relationship, and is paid for without debt. It could also be a flex fund contribution that allows you to leave, pivot, negotiate, or say no at some time in the future. This is spending that actually expands choice, not always immediately and not always dramatically, but at its core, structurally. It gives you more room to breathe that leads to options which lead to better choices. Now, let's talk about spending that actually buys you options, because that's where we start to run into some hiccups. This is the spending that creates a new must pay in your baseline. It adds recurring payments. It raises your baseline permanently or for a very long period of time. It increases more maintenance that you have to be in charge of. It creates lifestyle pressure because your baseline has gone up. It requires more income to be able to sustain it. And often it drains your buffer. And at the very least, it reduces your flex fund or your ability to contribute to the flex fund. It locks you into a version of life that you may eventually outgrow and will hold you back as a result. And this is where typically high earners get trapped because the spending may look reasonable. It may look normal. It may even look responsible. And remember, the brain is a powerful tool. it can talk you into almost anything. A bigger house in a better neighborhood, a nicer car because I work hard. Maybe it's a private school payment because you want the best for your kid. Maybe it's a premium gym membership because your health really matters. Maybe it's a co working space because you're really serious, getting serious about your business. Or perhaps it's a coaching program that you're investing in yourself. Or it could be a software subscription because your business needs this system, although you haven't really vetted it or tested it out. Maybe it's a family support payment because you're the one who's actually in the situation where you can actually help. Or perhaps it's a travel rhythm because you deserve the best. And again, none of those things are automatically wrong. I want to be very, very clear about this. None of these things are automatically wrong, but one of them can become an obligation if it raises your monthly must pay and reduces your ability to make choices. That is the filter, not the question, is it good or is it bad? Here's where I want you to reframe things. And I've talked about this before. Money is a tool, it's not good or bad. Think about a hammer. A hammer isn't useful if you want to cut your hair, but it's really great to remove or drive in a nail. I realize I may be oversimplifying, but I want you to see that the real question is, what does this purchase do for my future choices? Does it actually create capacity? Or does it create more dependency? Dependency on a job, dependency on staying in a relationship, dependency on staying in a state or a city that you don't necessarily feel happy or comfortable in? Does it create more fragility in your mental state, your physical state? Does it reduce volatility? Or does it raise my baseline expenses? Or actually, does it help me build my soul, SOLE, or SOUL? Does it make me look stable while quietly reducing my optionality? I just had a friend who's a professional stylist invite me to go with her to Dallas to the opening of a celebrity stylist, their new store. My friend has done a lot of free work for this person with the goal of getting to work with this celebrity stylist or be able to get some work for them. As we started making flight and hotel arrangements for what would be a weekend jaunt, I did some easy math and said, with flight, hotel, lift, food, shopping, this is going to be a $1,000 weekend for each of us. Now, this is a girls' trip for me, but this person hasn't demonstrated their desire to work with her or give her work. So I had to ask her, do you want this to just be a fun girl trip? Or do you really want this $1,000 to turn into something for your business? Neither one of those is a bad choice. But when making a compulsive spend, you should be really clear and intentional about the implications of that decision. I don't know what my friend has decided. One of our conversation was she might go without me. I told her I was happy to go and I was really looking forward to a girls' trip, but I also know that she's really trying to level up her business. So I just wanted her to be thinking about, is this just a girls' trip and we're just having fun? Or is she really looking at this as an opportunity for her business with a person who's demonstrated that they haven't really supported her business in a meaningful way that leads to her getting more work or at least getting more experience by working with this person? And so this is the trap that I'm talking about. And now I'm going to really speak directly to some of my high earners. High earners often have enough income to qualify for things that are technically affordable, but strategically expensive, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. And so this distinction, it becomes even more important. Technically affordable means, hey, can I make the car payment? Sure. Can I strategically afford? Is it strategically affordable? Which means, can I make the payment and still build my buffer, my brick house, my flex fund, build ownership, create rest, not have an impact on my health, and create other options? Those are very different questions. A lender might tell you that you can afford the house. I've had that happen to me before. The dealership might approve you for that car loan. I've also had that happen to me before. That subscription might only be $49. The business tool might only be $199 a month. That membership might be $300 a month. And if you're talking about lifetime, that's about exactly how much it costs. The school, the activity, the travel, the upgrade, the service, and the support payment for your family member might all make sense one by one. But optionality is not destroyed one decision at a time in isolation. Optionality is destroyed by accumulation. One monthly payment, then another, then another, then another. And that's when we start to see the accumulation of the decisions that were made independently. And until your income is high, your choices are low. That is the high earner, not yet rich trap. You look successful, you are earning, however, you're handling it pretty well, right? But there might be this low level anxiety or low level stress that it could be all fall apart at any moment. Your life requires too much income to keep running. And so if something happens and you don't have that income, you can't easily take a lower paying strategic opportunity. You can't leave that toxic job. You can't take a pause. You can't even begin to invest because you have made these other decisions that now have implications for future you. You can't help with wisdom because you're always helping from depletion. You can't take that entrepreneurial risk you've been wanting to take that you've been planning for. And you can't renegotiate your life. You're not in a position to do so because the obligations are so loud. So, the line for today is high income makes obligations easier to acquire and harder to question. That is why this conversation is so important. So, I'm going to see you after the break where we're going to be talking about looking at spending through the wealth identity lens. And we're going to be going through our 4 wealth identities and how this obligation versus optionality spending shows up. I will see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody, to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Today, we're talking about spending that gives you options versus spending that gives you obligations. And in the first segment, we talked about what does that look like? What exactly qualifies as spending as in building optionality? And what is spending that looks like obligation? And now I'm going to talk about that through the lens of your wealth identity. So I know that you've gone to www.dodifferentbetter.com and you've taken your wealth identity quiz. And so you know what your wealth identity is. So now we're going to talk about how does this play out for each one of the different wealth identities. So remember, we've got 4 wealth identities because each of us has a spending pattern that makes sense to us emotionally. That could be driven by our childhood of origin story or different experiences we've had in life. But even when they create financial pressure, these are our default decision making or our default ways that a lens that we're bringing to the conversation of making shopping decisions or purchasing decisions. Again, I want you to have no shame around this. This is really about recognizing a pattern. So tell me if you haven't taken the wealth identity quiz. Let me know if any of these things resonate. Listen for the things that may, like, oh, that sounds like me. But I'm also going to give you a solution. So first, we're going to talk about the builder. The builder wants structure, hence the name builder. Builders spend time on building systems, on having tools and upgrades and platforms and courses and consultants and productivity and organization and infrastructure. The builder's strength is that they understand capacity. They know that better systems can create better outcomes. But the builder's risk is that they tend to overbuild, right? They have too many tools, they have too many subscriptions. They're building on top of building on top of building, and they're creating actually too much complexity. There's too much of before I launch, I need one more thing, or I need one more tool, or one more system. So, what's important for the builder to ask themselves is this tool creating real capacity or imaginary capacity? Or am I buying this the feeling of being prepared? Asking, is this system actually reducing friction or adding something else to my plate that has to be managed? Is this investment tool tied to revenue, time, health, or actual delivery of something? Or is it just making me feel more legitimate? Now, on to my caretakers. Caretakers, I think you know very well, you spin through love. That's how it shows up. You cover people's expenses. You rescue them. You make life smoother for everyone else. You pay for dinner. I had a partner who did that all the time with our family. It drove me mental. It just drove me crazy. They help family. They overtip emotionally. They fund the gap. They make sure everyone is okay. The caretaker's strength is generosity. The caretaker's risk is you're buying obligations and disguising them as love. And we don't do that around here. And this is what it looks like. A one-time gift then becomes expected on a regular basis. A temporary rescue now becomes your monthly bill. A family emergency becomes your new baseline. It's added in your regular expenses. So, what's important for the caretaker to ask is this support time bound? Is it within my support budget? Remember, we talked about creating a budget specifically for support. Does it fund an outcome, or am I funding a pattern of behavior? Does this help preserve dignity and movement, or does it make me the financial infrastructure? So here's the soft but powerful truth. You can love people without becoming their backup plan for everything in their life. Now, on to my maximizer. The maximizer wants the best, the smartest options, the premium version, and, things with the highest return on investment. And that seems reasonable, rational, right? They're looking for the best school, the best neighborhood, the best coach, the best course, the best tool, the best travel, the best hack, the best optimization. The maximizer's strength is their ambition. That's great. But the maximizer's risk is stacking smart expenses until their optionality disappears. Every expense has a justifiable reason. Every upgrade has a justification. Every investment is strategic, quote unquote. But strategy without sequencing actually becomes chaos. So the maximizer has to ask themselves, is this the best move right now? Right now, in this moment, or just the best looking move? The move that maybe makes me look good or makes me feel better. Does this fit my current stage? Right? And can I implement it? Does this create more options? Or am I optimizing myself into more pressure? And we have to be careful because, again, the brain is a powerful liar. And so we really have to analyze or examine this. Now, for my minimalist strategists, they want simplicity. They don't want to overthink. They don't want to track every single dollar. They don't want their money to become a whole second job and having this due diligence that's on a hourly by hour basis, right? Their strength is that they want to avoid unnecessary complexity. And that's great. However, the risk is default spending. The subscriptions renew automatically. Their insurance increases without them knowing how much or when, and their lifestyle begins to creep. Their baseline starts to creep. Apps stay on their credit card and just are automatically renewing. Support payments continue when they should have ended. Money leaks out because nobody wants to do the admin. So the minimalist strategist needs to be really hyper focused in asking themselves, what am I paying for by default? What monthly expense do I not even notice anymore? What obligation did I never intentionally actually choose? What renewal, service, or convenience became permanent without even reviewing it? This is why the options versus obligation filter matters so much. It gives every wealth identity a way to pause without spiraling. Now, here is the diagnostic. Before we are going to break, I want to ask you 5 important questions. And you don't have to answer them all right now, but I'm hoping that as you're listening to this, see what one really lands for you. Maybe your heartbeat goes a little faster. Maybe you are thinking about your chest gets a little tighter. But question 1 is, what recent purchase gave you more freedom? Not what purchase felt fun, not what purchase made you look good. What purpose actually gave you more choice? Question number 2. What recent purchase created a new obligation? Question 3. What monthly payment do you now resent? Right? Maybe it was great in the beginning and now you can't stand every time you look at your credit card bill or or you look at your banking statement on your phone and you're like, ugh, every time I see that, I just want to like pull my hair out, right? This one is super, super important because resentment is often a signal that something became an obligation without you actually giving consent. Now, question number 4. What expense looked small but actually raised your baseline? Because small recurring costs, they're sneaky. They don't feel dangerous until they start to multiply. And here's question 5. What spending actually increased your capacity? That might be the spending that you actually want to keep. Remember, it's not good or bad. We're trying to create capacity because the goal here is not to just cut everything out of your life. We're not shrinking your life down to a penal system, right? Or punishment. We are learning to spend for freedom. And we're learning that we need to install a filter. So these are the 5 questions you want to ask before a spending or an expense or a purchase actually becomes your lifestyle. Because spending is actually not the enemy. It's actually the unexamined spending that gets you there. And that's not actually what we're looking for. We're actually just looking for, how can I discern or think more thoughtfully about where things are going. Now, this also doesn't mean that you can't like buy those compulsive purchases. But again, just thinking, knowing and making the decision that this is a purchase that I know is not creating optionality. I have the money for it. It's not going to actually create more burden on my life, right? That's the point, right? It's not that you can't take that $1,000 trip that my girlfriend wanted to take, but know that that's what you're doing. You're spending $1,000 that has no return on investment. And that is okay. But let's know that, not let's take the trip and come back and now have an airline flight on my credit card, which I really didn't have the money to pay for in the first place. I spent money on a hotel. I went shopping. I bought all this food. And I really don't have a way to pay for it. It's all on the credit card at 29% interest. Now, that payment that you've got to pay for that $1,000 trip now has to be added to your baseline expenses. And so that means for a small business, and she's a small business owner, Now she's got to go and now find that money through hopefully getting a client that's now going to pay for that. And what if there's something happens and there's no clients right now? Maybe everybody's preoccupied. It's June. People are preoccupied with weddings. People are preoccupied. They're preoccupied with graduation. They're not necessarily looking for her service at this moment. So, really thinking about how making the intentional decision that you actually want to spend this money and know that this is just a fun trip, or I'm doing this because I actually have an intention and want to turn this into something for my business. Either I want to turn this into work, I want to turn this into a connection, I want to turn this into, so like being super, super intentional about what that means and what that looks like. So you now understand what optionality versus obligation is. You now have 5 questions. I'm now going to get into in the last segment talking about the traps. So I will see you after the break. You're listening to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. And today we have been talking about spending for obligations versus spending that creates optionality. And in the first segment, I talked about what is the difference between spending for optionality and spending for obligation. In the second segment, talked about actually what does that look like through the wealth identity framework, as well as giving you some really concrete examples of ways to think about it, and particularly giving you 5 key questions that you can ask yourself as to, am I making a spend that is creating optionality, or am I making a spend that is creating obligation? Again, neither one is bad. The goal is to be intentional and thoughtful so that we know that what we're getting into, and we don't pay for mistakes or compulsivity later down the line that creates tightness and restriction in our ability to be able to move and leverage and create the life that we actually want for ourselves. So now, as we close out this episode, I'm now going to be talking about the 3 different types of spending, right? And I'm going to make this super, super, super easy. I really want you to think about classifying your spending into 3 types of spending. Here's the first one. The first one is what I call freedom spending. Freedom spending buys time, health, capacity, income, mobility, safety, and future choice. Here are some examples of what that looks like. Childcare that creates work capacity, especially if you work from home. You might be thinking, I could actually get so much more done, and I might only need 4 or 5 hours of childcare so that I can actually get that work done so that I can actually have more time at home. Or maybe it's so that you can grow your business. Maybe it's therapy that helps you stop repeating expensive patterns or some other toxic behavior that's not serving you or your partnership. Maybe it's a reliable car that protects your income, gets you to and from your job, right? Or maybe it's a certification that has a clear ROI. I used to run a program in Nevada where I worked with teachers, and when teachers went back to school after getting their bachelor's and got a master's degree, they automatically got a $5,000 bump in pay as part of their collective bargaining with the union. So things like that, like you're going into debt to get this education, but you're going to have this long-term financial return because your income's going to be bumped up permanently. Maybe it's a business tool that saves you measurable time, right? That allows you now to sell more, field more customers, whatever the case may be is. Maybe it's a legal agreement that prevents future chaos. Maybe it's a partnership agreement or estate planning. Maybe it's a flex fund contribution or a vacation paid in cash that truly restores you because you know you're not having debt, right? Going back to my story of my friend. But also, freedom spending says, this is going to give me more life. The next category is maintenance spending. Maintenance spending keeps your life running. It's not glamorous or sexy, it's not always optional, but it must be planned. Some examples are life insurance or health insurance. Maybe it's home repairs. I'm literally working on my basement right now. My basement remodel was really intended to, one, gain some more living space in my home, but also make my home like give me a higher quality of life, which means I know I'm the kind of person, I'm a subject to my environment. And by having a better environment, I'm going to work better. I'm going to feel better, which means I'm going to show up better for everything that I do. I'm going to show up better for all of you, right? Maybe it's a home repair that you've been looking to do. Maybe it's a new air conditioner, or maybe it's a car payment or some medical care that you've been putting off. It could be taxes, either preparing for taxes or paying some back taxes so that obligation is no longer there. Maintenance spending says this keeps the machine running. The danger is pretending maintenance is optional until it becomes an emergency. So once again, the danger is pretending maintenance is optional until it becomes an emergency. Spending type number 3. This is trap spending. Trap spending adds obligation without actually increasing your options. It usually has one of 3 results. It raises your baseline, it drains the reserves, and it is driven by pressure and sometimes by pleasure. Here are some examples. A car payment that steals from your buffer, meaning you maybe go from one car payment to a bigger car payment because you wanted a better car, because you thought that that was the thing that you needed to do, right? A business subscription stack that you barely use, a luxury upgrade financed by stress, a family support with no end date, a house that keeps you in a job that you hate, a course bought from panic but never implemented, or a membership that kept because canceling feels like admitting something that you don't necessarily want to admit to yourself. Trap spending says, I look like I was moving forward, but I'm actually narrowing my choices. Again, no shame. This is all information, right? Now you have information. So now you can think about how you might want to make decisions differently. We've all done some version of this. The point is to catch it earlier than later. So now that we've gone through the 5 questions and we've gone through the different types of spending traps, now I want to get into something that is just as important that I think, especially for this topic, that I want you to consider. And these are going to be the decision rules. So once again, some of you might be thinking like, okay, Elaine, this is all great, but if I know that I'm really good at manipulating myself into justifying or rationalizing things, what can I do? So I'm going to give you some objectivity. I'm going to give you some decision rules that you can implement to help your brain realign, reassess, and be able to actually stop reimagineering your rationale for some of the decisions that you're making. Now, these are the rules I want you to take from this episode. Rule number 1, if it is reoccurring, it must fit the baseline. If it comes every month, it is not casual. It is a part of the structure. And then what did we say? The decision for whether or not it goes in the baseline is it necessary to keep life running, right? So you've got a 2-pronged approach. If you don't know what those decisions are, go back to a previous episode. I talk about what are the decision rules for your baseline, right? Rule number 2, if it drains your buffer, right? So we've got our baseline, we've got our buffer, and we've got our brick house. If it drains the buffer, press the pause button. It's not that it's an automatic no, it's a pause. And what protection are you giving up if you were to go forward, right? Rule number 3, if it increases income, capacity, health, mobility, ownership, I want you to evaluate it as a potential option. Don't reject strategic spending just because it costs money. Some spending is how you get to the next level. Rule number 4, if it requires perfect income to sustain, it is an obligation trap. Perfect income means no job loss, no slow month, no health disruption, no family event, no emergency, and no external market change influences what your decision is or what the spend is or to your life. And we all know that that's just not how real life goes. Rule number 5, if you feel urgency, guilt, or comparison, wait 24 hours. This is a powerful one that I continue to use right now. I use it I wouldn't say often, but I know that feeling of compulsion. I know that feeling of like, oh, I've got to have it right now. Give it 24 hours. Right? You're running off of adrenaline that's pumping in your body, or maybe even dopamine that's going to your brain that says, yes, that will make me feel better. It'll do these things that I'm convincing myself that it'll do. Wait 24 hours to let the hormone run out of your body and see if it still makes sense the next day or the next evening, whatever the case may be is. Urgency is often anxiety wearing a really, really cute blazer. Guilt is not a budget category. Comparison is not a financial plan. Simply wait it out. Wait the adrenaline out, wait the dopamine out, and see, okay, clearer heads can prevail. Once again, it's not saying that upon immediate discussion, the decision is not a good one. It's that you're creating discernment. Now, rule number 6, no new fixed cost without removing or reducing a fixed cost. Remember our 1 in, 1 out rule. If you add a recurring expense, remove or reduce another recurring expense. Okay. That one rule alone can protect a lot of optionality. Something similar I used to do with my son. So my son he's a December baby. So he's got his birthday and he's got Christmas. We celebrate Christmas, and he's got both of those in the same month. Well, as you can imagine, he's got people giving him birthday gifts, maybe classmates, maybe friends, and then he's got things that are coming from the family and also friends giving him Christmas gifts. So when he was a child, what I would have him do is he had an 18-gallon Rubbermaid tub that all of his toys went in. And when we would have get his birthday gifts, I would say, okay, all of your toys have to fit in this bin. So if you've got new toys, something's got to come out. And so the things that would come out had to fit in one of 3 categories: what he was going to keep, what he was going to give away, and what was trash. Like no kid would want those toys because they're just trash, right? Now, the ones that he would give away, and we would not put things in the giveaway pile that were like broken or anything like that. So we kind of had some discernment around what stayed in the pile to give away. And the giveaway pile, I would have him we would go to shelters, or we would go to the pediatric ward of a hospital, or we would go to some child care center, and he would give these toys away. So one, he's now understanding the concept of giving, and he's understanding the concept of giving like something nice, not just his trash, not his garbage. Then he had more room for all the new toys that he would get. And it was a powerful lesson. Now, it was born out of practicality. I didn't want a whole bunch of toys around my house, all right, particularly as a single parent. But it also was a great tool of helping him appreciate you don't just get to lie into your impulses and keep every single thing and hoard every single thing, right? It was really about him learning that he had to discern what he was going to keep and what he was not going to keep, right? And that's translated till to today. He still does some of that today, right? He's very thoughtful and mindful about his things and what he keeps and what he gives away. So it's a really, really powerful lesson. So feel free to borrow that from me if you think that would help you or help your child. So as we start to round out this conversation, I want you to keep something in mind. I want you to think about spending for freedom and not spending for fragility, right? That is it. It's not about spend less money. This is not about an indictment on never have enjoying, this isn't about don't take that $1,000 weekend trip. That's not what it's about. It's not about being cheap. Again, the point wasn't that we couldn't take this $1,000 trip just for fun. The point is that we were making a decision that that's what we were doing. Or I was doing that and she was going on business, which also helped me understand how are we going to spend our time while we were there. I'm not thinking that it's a girls trip and we're doing all these fun things and she's actually trying to get some work done, right? By making connections and networking and things like that. We're both kind of clear on like what are we doing when we go on this trip. This isn't about being scared. I hope you're not walking away from this conversation now with a whole nother level of fright. That's not the goal. But, and the goal is also not to hoard cash, but really thinking about spending for capacity and building your capacity and being more intentional, spending for your health, right? Prioritizing your health, because without your health, you can't do any of this. Spending for ownership, right? Whatever that means, whether that is a rental property, whether that is a car that's going to be safe and secure for you, like, that gets you to your job, but it's also spending for real joy, right? Not superficial joy that dissipates, spending for the life that you're actually wanting to build. But stop buying obligations and calling them options. Stop buying pressure and calling it self care. And stop buying maintenance and regretting the full cost. Stop buying a lifestyle upgrades that require a version of that is never tired, never sick, never interrupted, never caregiving, never in transition, or never in a slow season, because that version of you does not exist. Build for the real you, the brilliant you, the high capacity you, the sometimes tired you, the ambitious you, the generous you, the future wealthy you, the you who deserves both joy and choices. This week, your action item is simple. Download the option versus obligation spending filter, then pick one recent or upcoming purchase and run it through the 5 questions that I've given you. Does it increase your future choices, or is it a one-time recurring expense? Does it create maintenance? Does it protect or drain your buffer, your brick house, your flex fund? Is it values aligned or pressure aligned? And if you want examples, you can go to YouTube or send me a question. Contact me over YouTube or on Instagram. Send me a DM. Would love to hear from you, because optionality is built in the moment before money leaves the account. Spend for freedom, not for agility, and turn income into optionality. I can't wait to see you at Pride next week. And if you're not going to be at Pride, then I will see you the week after that, where I show you how to do different better.